Been a minute, but we're back again, guys. Hello. How are we doing today? For those of you who are on my side of the world, good morning. It's been a day. The Women's World Cup has just completed. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of lessons, a lot of great moments in it. But we want to spend today kind of taking some time, talk about things that we've learned about the women's game. Maybe we didn't know. Maybe you've been following the game, and to you, this is no surprise. But we're going to talk a little bit about what we've learned through this tournament. Anyone on this side of the world, good morning. We want to first of all say congratulations to Spain for winning their first ever female women's World Cup. It's great. I don't know why I said female women's, but it's an early morning to me. Um, so congratulations to them beating England 1-0 in the final in a game that was as entertaining as we hoped it would be, and ultimately, I think the better team ended up winning. I think the biggest winner after this game is my sleep schedule. I won't have to wake up at early hours to catch games. This final being at 6 a.m. my time felt really good. And so it's kind of good to kind of take a look at it, see how things are going with it. But congratulations to Spain. And we want to take a little bit of time looking through if you guys are new to the channel. We haven't done a live in a while. I do apologize for that. I went away for vacation, which really wasn't vacation, and then I got sick. So then I lost my voice a little bit. I still have a little bit of a cough. So I have my trusty non-branded water here. And I'm going to be keeping my throat as well, just unparched as possible. But that being the case, congratulations again to Spain on winning their first ever World Cup. And if you look at Spain, that's a very good run for them. If you look at everything, we've seen their success recently in the U17s, we've seen their success recently in the U20s. And to come up with that treble really does work well and shows the depth of the program and how they are building it well and looking well in it. So, congratulations to the Spanish players for winning this World Cup. I think they were one of the better teams this tournament and truly deserved the accolades and ultimately the trophy. Right now, we are just watching the trophy being presented. And so, because of that, it's always good to know. But guys, leave your comments down below if you are interested. I know eventually it's been a while. So some of you are like, wait, he's doing a live? He does those? Don't worry, guys. I'll be here for a little bit. So don't you worry about that. With that being the case, we are here and we are talking about this Women's World Cup, which I think has been a good World Cup, to be honest. We saw a lot of attendance records broken. And a little bit of that will come down to the reality that we added more teams. We went from 24 team to a 32 team World Cup. But still, it was great to see the different teams coming through and just playing well. And I think that's one of the things we'll get to in terms of how we're talking and how things are looking. I see Stefan right in the comments right now. Good morning, Stefan. It's good to see you here. Thanks for stopping by. Let me know in the comments, what are the things that you think you've learned from this Women's World Cup? Whether it could be your national team, it could be other teams, it could be the game overall. What are some of the things that you feel that we have learned about women's football after this World Cup? And I think if we talk about specifically the 32 teams, I think there were a lot of us who were a little bit concerned thinking, what happens if we add all these additional teams, right? Are we going to see a repeat of last year where basically the US saw Thailand and said, you know what, here's 13 for you, just with a side of chips? And we were a little bit concerned with that, but we actually didn't see that, which is good. I think it does show a little bit. What the main thing for me is the gap between the lowest ranked teams and the best ranked teams. Ranking doesn't mean as much a lot, and I think that's good. The quality of women's football has risen exponentially, in my opinion. I do agree with that, and I disagree with it to an extent. And here's what I mean by it. I think we've seen a level of coaching that has definitely improved. We've seen more teams in this tournament who walked in with a clear identity of how they wanted to play. And I think that consistently provided a lot of the a lot of the drama in terms of the matchups that came into this World Cup. I think if you look at teams like Ireland, who came in saying we're just going to be defensive, we're going to be tough, and it's going to be a battle for 90 minutes, and we're going to do our best to make sure that you earn every blade of grass that you step on. You saw that coming through. If you look at a team like Morocco, who came in defensively sound, but enough prowess on the offensive where they could really cause problems for teams. You saw them lose their first game to Germany and then 1-0 and 1-0 their way to the round of 16, right? I think the coaching in this World Cup, I think, was good. I look at Group B, for example, Nigeria's coach, especially again, if you don't know me, Canadian, Ghanaian, so rooting for Canada this World Cup. But having seen Nigeria play, I think seeing how Nigeria went from, how they varied their pressures, whether it was just a full back, staying in a low block, then a mid block press, and then just a full press to take away space, how teams were able to transition from that, how teams were able to move around with that, I think really showed how at least the more time together with your national teams, you were able to see that flexibility and that tactical just preparedness and versatility. And I think when you saw that with a team like Nigeria, yes, they ended up losing in penalties to England, the eventual runners up, but we saw things like that throughout this World Cup. I think teams have a better idea and coaches have a better idea of who these players are and more importantly, what they have to their disposal as a team. And I think they paid a lot of good attention to it, but also built their team around their strengths a lot better. I don't think that the gap in terms of talent is as close as the gap in terms of coaching and preparation. Again, a well schooled and a well trained unit can beat individuals any day of the week. You'd almost argue 9 out of 10 days. Some days, talent just spills over and you're able to get through. But ultimately, I feel that if you look at the coaching, especially when we look at the final 16 teams that made it through, right? You can't tell me that none of those teams, you can't say their coaching work wasn't the main reason. Yes, you have to score goals, but the coaches were able to put them into a great position to win. Like, look at the final 16, right? We have teams, we have players: Switzerland, Spain, the Netherlands, South Africa, Japan, Norway, Sweden, US, Nigeria, England, Colombia, Jamaica, Australia, Denmark, France, and Morocco. You can't say that coaching didn't play a good role here. The level of competition is getting better. There's no doubt about that. But I think what makes it interesting is now you see the more time that you spend, and you saw it leading up to this World Cup, where you had a lot of teams who were really complaining about, hey, lack of preparation time. We need more. We need more friendlies. We need more things that can prepare us for this World Cup. And I think to an extent, you saw a variety of it, right? You saw a team like Nigeria who didn't have as many chances, but still were able to play well. You saw a team like Canada who, outside of their early games in the year, only played France, and that was their preparation. And it looked like they really lacked some of that game formness, but also the preparedness for how teams would counter what they were doing. So I think that the time spent on task is really important in that aspect. How well are you preparing? How well are you working there? Which I think is a good segue to talk in terms of investment. If we look at the finalists of this World Cup, you have England and Spain, and you could argue which two countries haven't, out of those two countries, who has invested more into the women's game more recently. And you can see it within their clubs, right? You can see it in their leagues, right? The WSL and La Liga Femme are probably two, if not the best two world leagues out there, right? And if you look at that to bring in a North American aspect to it, you have NWSL, who's still a top league, but you could argue what France, England, Spain, and then the NWSL, top four leagues. But it's the investment that kind of what makes it interesting in terms of the investment is just where it started. You see clubs investing in, you see federations investing in it. We see Australia just announced after hosting, they're going to invest about 200 million Australian dollars into their sports infrastructure. And I think sports infrastructure is so important, especially when you look at, can you empower the people who are doing well? If you are, can you give opportunities to players coaches, um, environments where they can continue to foster the growth. If you look at those top 16 teams that made it, most, if not all of them, have thriving leagues, and they've kind of approached them in different ways, right? You look at like a team like Colombia, where, and especially when you look at like that Central to Eastern American mindset when it comes to Central and Southern, sorry, mindset when it comes to sports. It's you support the team, regardless if it's the U17s men's, regardless if it's the women's, regardless if it's the men's. If you're wearing the Palmeiras kit, you're supporting Palmeiras. There's a game on Tuesday for the U17s. There's a game on Thursday for the women. There's a game on Saturday for the men. You'll be there, support it, right? And then other aspects, there's looking at it from the standpoint of, can you bring it in? Can you not? How are you going through? But it's a very fascinating conversation in terms of what we've seen and how we've seen the investment from teams moving through. And I bring this man in because even though he's on vacation, he'll still give me a good 15, just like additional time this year. He'll give me my 15. And I appreciate to have you, JD. How's vacation treating you so far?
I'm fantastic. I'm in England. My in-law was actually rooting for England. I was rooting for England to slightly do something, but I
Mm-hmm.
had to tell him that the Spain team is not a normal team,
Mm,
and they are going for the three-peat, not just three World Cups, but three in the same year. Youth
yeah.
17s, 20s, and the main team, and the style of play that they have is so ridiculous. The
Mm-hmm.
suffocation of the closing of spaces is not normal,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that I had to help advise people not to take the Japan loss too serious because I was watching the game, and the next time Spain would have beaten Japan,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't be so clinical on 2 days, and
Yeah.
Spain is so wasteful. But to be honest, we have to be fair. Spain was pretty much wasteful straight throughout this tournament because this game should have done at half time.
It
Should
should
have
have
done at
been,
half
yeah.
time. Redonda
Mhm.
got an empty goal. Two other flipping crosses should have been tapped in, and the goal should have scored as well. So
Mhm.
good job to England, but Spain was the better team coming in. Even on the betting odds, it was slightly in favor of them. Yeah.
Mhm. No, I agree with that. That I think when we look at the game, the first thing I started to notice after those first 20 minutes, it was literally just Spain said, "No, bring the wing back pressure. When we turn you over, there'll be space aplenty just to take advantage of that." And to me, that brought memories of like Canada versus Australia, where Australia
Hmm.
just said, "Yeah, bring the fullbacks in. Mary Fowler likes to run. We'll let her run." And so I was watching. I was like, "Oh, you need to adjust that." And I was gonna tweet this, but the game was delayed. But it just felt as if, regardless of how many players they put into the midfield, Spain just said, "That's fine. We'll just pass through you."
Yeah, because
And
they had four in midfield, right?
mhm,
And it looks like it's just the pressing metric of how fast they can get to the players.
mhm,
It was just leaps and bounds. To be honest,
mhm,
we have to be honest. But I'm looking at my stats here and my
mhm,
rating. They gave Lucy Brands a 7.5. Based
mhm.
on, that was just based on activity. Lucy Brands
Yeah,
was the worst player on this damn field.
I think she struggled a little bit in moments.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, the lack of knowledge towards the spacing, it was just ridiculous. She gave Salma is one of the fastest, young, exciting players.
Hmm.
You don't want to give her an advantage to score or create something. She gave her opportunities often, 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 often. So definitely, um, it's rough, But
Hmm.
Spain, England kept themselves in it. Second half
Hmm.
performance was much, much better. I was not really happy with the changes because I thought that Russell, even though she never scored in the first half, she looked solid.
Hmm.
Dale was one of the best players on the pitch. You understand me? So
Yeah.
I want to say that I am very sorry, but I want to say that the coach might get it wrong. Got it wrong. Wegman,
Hmm.
I thought you got it wrong at halftime. Don't know what the fans think. I don't know, but I thought that you
Hmm.
got it wrong. What say you
I,
on that?
I think it was a choice. You had to do something. Um, and I get changing it, but I wasn't sure if the players, if you couldn't have just changed the formation based off the players or move something around. I think, yeah, you change the formation, that makes sense. But ultimately, I was like, okay, Daly, but Daly off. I could have understand taking off Russell. Like, I wouldn't have agreed with it, but I get why you wanted to do that. Throw someone else in the midfield. But the Daly choice to me, I was looking and saying, but she hasn't been terrible. Like nothing's looked good. I get it, but she's not the main issue. The main issue is getting a little bit more of space and defending on the wings was what was really eating them up. So I think she did get it wrong here, but ultimately, I mean, she got it wrong because they lost, but definitely in the second half, they definitely started off with a little bit more energy. Lauren James on the ball definitely gave them a little bit more possession, which helped them in their attack. Ultimately, they just weren't fruitful with their chances. They weren't able to really do anything with them. And the thing that I found most interesting is just you watch a player like Lauren Hemp. Lauren Hemp just creates chaos for whatever backline she plays against, right? Regardless if it's Australia, yeah, if the ball bounces twice, she's getting to it. That's just the type of player she is, determined on the ball. And so I felt if they had gone a little bit more direct in that second half, trying to get some more crosses in, maybe eventually the ball bounces their way. But in terms of they got a little bit more of the midfield in terms of moving around. But I felt that ultimately, if they had gotten a little bit more direct, I think they may have had a better shot of maybe getting that equalizer versus what they had moving.
She just explained herself. She just explained herself. Said she changed to a 3-4-3 to see if she can get some momentum, and she thought that she had the momentum. She did okay. She did okay, but Spain, she got out coached today. You know, you have to say that, and you have to be prepared to pull your players once you have to be prepared to pull anyone. And I thought that Brand should have come off, but when I'm in England now, so I get to realize how important Brands is.
Yeah,
and I do believe that that's the reason why she stayed on the pitch, because they're talking about how much she did. She sold the brand towards kids, you know, to play fullback and try to be inverted. But she was very poor today. Very sorry. Yeah. I am not giving her a 7.5. Jason, bless yourself. Thanks for being here.
Indeed.
So we had the best player. Let me tell you who won it. The best young player. We had Salma won the best young player. Jason,
yeah, that's no surprise.
Never got it. And Ban Maki got the player of the tournament. I thought that if it was for England, it would have been Greenwood.
Yeah.
Greenwood. It would have been Greenwood or Jess Carter. Greenwood, Jess Carter, or Mari Arps. Those would have been the one winning it if for England. And for Spain, it would have to be Carmona Olga and or Ban Maki or Teresa. Those are the three players that was stand out straight through the tournament. So with Salma winning the young player, you agree with that?
See, that's interesting because I was in a conversation with like, who would you pick as a young player? I think she, based off what her team did and how she positively impacted the game, I think she's probably the best young player to win this tournament. Do I think she's the best young player at this tournament?
You still
no. And believe me, I think they all have a good high level that they can do stuff with. But I think
that's true.
I think a player like Lynn, and this again, we're talking about things we learned at this World Cup. So I think Salma definitely deserved it. But I think in the greater scheme, I think a player like Linda Caicedo has a slightly higher ceiling than her. I think
we might have to take that back soon, Africans.
And that's fine.
You know why? Obviously, she's very much taller than both Caicedo and Dumani. She's building her technical ability. I think that's the poor side of her game, and she's in the highest technical team. So I think with that said, when you put it together, she might just be. She have the opportunity to be as good as any one of them, to be honest, and maybe surpass them in statistics as well. Because definitely what she did overall in the game, overall in the tournament, she just had the edge to be the best player out of all three of them. But I agree with you, based on the full skill set, if you put a Caicedo in Spain team, she might produce a little bit more than Salma, but Salma is faster than Caicedo, you know. Faster, stronger, has aerial ability, and passing range and shooting range. You have to give Salma over actual Caicedo. But dribbling, close control, close controlling, you have to give Caicedo over her. So yes, I agree with you. But I think she deserves it. She deserves it. Based on what she did, she won 2 games off the bounce. Yeah. She was one brought them here, you know. You have to remember that as well, you know.
Yeah. And I think the thing that you have to give Salma the credit for is the reality is on a team that is so deep that Spain was, she was at times the best player on the pitch. So you can't deny the young player at the very least. If not say, but I mean, if they gave you the player of the tournament, I wouldn't have bat an eye. I think Botmane has been more consistent, but I think the peaks for Salma have been. There are moments where you look at like, no, she's the best player for Spain, and Spain has unfit but warm Putellas on the bench, just ready to come in. So like you can't take that away from her. I think she at moments was the best player for Spain, and Spain being that loaded, you can't deny that. So her getting the young player for sure, yeah.
For me, I don't think she was ever the best player, but she was always the most impactful player. Because Banmati and Teresa with Olga, I thought that they were always the three best players on Spain team. Because remember, Spain deal with possession base, and they were always the one dictating the possession at all time. Doesn't matter when they switched all of the other players, those three players have always been on the field to dictate something. So they were always the best player. But I agree with you on the impact what she brought to the team, especially the other day when they were playing Netherlands.
Yes.
And you're just saying, bring on the dynamite for us to light up the place with speed. But through Redonda, she was one of the best goal scorers in world football. So they were using that as an advantage to start her. But definitely Salma proves that she brings something different to the table. Yeah, so but I have to say that I fully agree with Big Boss, man. So how are you doing? Everything is okay so far?
Everything's good so far, yeah. I mean, my voice is still holding up. I think I haven't started coughing terribly yet, so we should be good. But no, yeah, everything is going so well so far. You if you're here for however long you are, it's fine.
Yeah, I am here for a little bit more because my wife is outside and I need to go to her. Then I have to come in and take care of the kid. But we can drop something Friday. We're gonna start by Friday, man, because I'm gonna be in Belgium Thursday, and then we can be back. Jason says yes. I thought you have gone to Teresa because Teresa is the engine of the team. But they get Banmati. Banmati was just equally as effective, but she's more forward, progressive. Jason. So that's why I thought that they linked her to it. You know. So I always believe it would have gone between the three. So I never really batted that eye, but Teresa should have gotten it. So I thought that they kind of, did her bad, to be honest. And Olga, you have to say Olga pushed herself in it because she fought hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, Africans.
Both
so
in the semis and that,
before we go on, the most disappointing team so far and the best underdog team, who you give so far? Let me try run it off in 3-4 minutes.
Yeah.
Most disappointing team for you is who? Who you will give it to?
I think for me, the most disappointing team is Germany. To me,
Germany.
I think so.
They only lost one game. They only lost one game.
Yeah, and that game.
No, Africans. I have to call you. What do you mean, Germany? Germany scored some of the most goals in the first round. They got 4 points, but just couldn't. I would have to say Canada. No, I have to say Canada.
Here's why I'm saying Germany over Canada. And here's why I'm saying Germany over Canada. Okay.
The competition.
Yes, you could see a pathway for Canada not making it out of the group. Group B was the group of death.
That is true because we had said that. Yeah, that is true.
So the reality was there was a possibility that like Canada could finish first or last or third and not make it. Germany's group, no one was saying they're gonna get grouped. No one was saying Germany was gonna get grouped. So for me, looking at that, I was like, if that's the case, Canada not making it out of the group is disappointing. There's no doubt about it. But if you told me Germany in a group with South Korea, Morocco, and Colombia, they don't make it out, I think most people would be more surprised by that than say Canada not making. Canada's still disappointed. But I think comparatively,
I still believe Canada is most disappointed. But I'm going to let you off because they gave me a good excuse. So I'm going to let you not sweat anymore.
I'm wearing the kit, JD. I'm feeling good. Don't worry. I'm feeling good.
All right.
No.
When you factor in the opponent, Jason, he planned that. But we're going to corner him on the big channel as well. He's not going to escape.
It's okay. Look, I will tell. Here's the thing, JD. I will tell you, Canada didn't perform well, and I'm not going to give you all the reasons why they didn't. But I think at the end of the day, the big thing was that they were not in the form that they were last year, and a lot of things. But again, if we looked at group from the day one, we said that's a group of death. I
Yes,
think Canada can make it out, but there's a pathway where they don't make it out of the group, and it went exactly like that, right?
fair enough,
So,
fair enough.
but okay, so for me, guys, you guys have put some in, expecting a lot from the US. I mean,
US did it. They never played well, but they were
mhm,
disappointed because they were better than Sweden by a good
mhm,
stretch, and
mhm,
they did everything to lose the game. They missed the big chances after created
yeah,
it. They played their best game at the latter stage of the tournament. So
mhm,
I have to agree. Where's the remote, Joe? So I can turn it down.
mhm,
So I have to agree there, but yeah, when you look at all of the things them, no one likes them in America. They want to get rid of them and stuff. I think they did well. They did well, but
mhm.
they should have reached further. You know?
Yeah, I think they should have reached further, but also I thought that I didn't think they were going to win this World Cup because I felt that their young stars, this was their first time on the big stage, right? The Sophia Smiths, Swanson was injured, but like Trinity Rodman, like those players, and even you can talk about why didn't they play Ashley Sanchez, but I felt that those players, they needed a World Cup under their feet. And the rest of the team, I didn't wasn't sure if they would be ready for it. That's why I was thinking this World Cup, and I've been saying this for the last 2 years, if there was a chance to clip this team, it'd be this World Cup. Because I think after this, when these players really hit their stride in their prime, then it's going to be them. And I think if they win a World Cup in this next round, where the world has caught up with them, then it's like, okay, that's more impressive than some of the early ones. But I never thought the US was going to win this World Cup. I
Yeah,
never,
I never
yeah.
thought of that as well. Yeah, I'm big of yourself, DNA. And massive respect, Stefan. Yeah. Yeah, I thought that USA they did okay.
Mm-hmm,
Japan, Japan, I thought the exact thing would have happened to Japan. I said it the night before. The
mm-hmm,
physicality would have got them out with Sweden. Sweden is just a dangerous team, you know,
yeah.
and
No,
they
for
struggle
sure.
with the physicality. So
Mm-hmm.
Spain fully deserved, man.
Fully
So
deserved.
Africans, I'm gonna run, leave you and the people.
No
Thanks
problem.
everyone. Please smash the like button over here and also on my short video because I did a short video as well before just to make sure I gloat and saying that I'm the king of Kankaka because I told him all the games and he taking me
Hey.
for a fool. And in fact, I've doubled down with the one Jason said. Listen to me. If tomorrow Japan plays Spain in the knockout, they are going out. Just watch and see. All right. So I need my credit. I need my credit to be the
Hey.
prediction god. Yes, so I'm
Hey.
gonna wait until I hear what one Jason says. I need my credit.
But
I
hey,
thumbs down your video already, JD. Oh my god. His brother is bad minded. After
yo, too much, too much.
after you guys in the prediction army. But people take care. I'm gonna
Mm,
go and see one of my grand aunt, me and my grand aunt and stuff.
yes. Enjoy the
Yeah,
time
yeah.
off, Katie. Enjoy
Yeah,
it.
man. Yeah, man. All right. So thanks yet again, people, for keeping supporting the program. We are gonna do a few more lives over Africans because we need the people to be over here as well. So
Mhm.
hopefully Africans have a few days to install some system. So hopefully we get it up and running. All right. Take care,
Indeed, indeed.
Africans, and take care, everyone. Yeah.
Take care, take care. All right. Thank you, JD,
Yeah.
again
Man.
for stopping by. It's been always good to have him on the channel. But let's get back to that conversation in terms of teams that impressed you, but then teams that disappointed you in this World Cup. Because I think for me, looking at teams that impressed me, I mean, we can go back to Group H and say, and you can almost have this conversation as an overall concept, which is, are there any federations that are on the rise? Are there federations that maybe look stagnant based off everything? Are there federations that look like they're dropping a little bit? Um, Shout out to CAF. Shout out to Africa. I did not expect. I think after you watch the first few games, you started to think some things, and CAF being the Confederation of African Football. I mean, Nigeria looked good, so you said, okay, there's a pathway. They were in a group of death. South Africa looked good as well because you saw the speed giving teams like Sweden and other teams problems. So you said, okay, I could see a pathway where that goes through. Zambia was just my team of vibes, and if they were in any other group, I felt they would have done better. But I did not see Morocco doing what they did. I did not at all. I thought they were a good team, but I didn't see them turning it around and then getting those 2 1-0 victories and making it out of the group in second. In the group that has Germany, where we talked about a little bit being a little bit disappointing, where we talk about South Korea, which came out looking like they could cause some problems for teams, but weren't able to get the finishing that they needed. It's curious to see, and I kind of had talked about this on the podcast before, which of these African teams do I think can sustain their success? If Nigeria actually pays people, probably Nigeria. But Nigeria has, and I know I got some Jamaicans in the chat, Nigeria has the luxury that, say, like a Jamaica has, where they don't necessarily have to, that you need to develop some sort of a youth system where you can continue to either get players going and get them to professional environments. But because of the diaspora that they have, they can look to basically any country and say, look, play and go from there, see how you're going from there. So I think shout out to African nations who did well. And even Zambia, though they weren't able to play as well as they could have, still were able to show out and got their win at this World Cup. DNA, I give you the credit. Predicted Sweden be in the finals. I mean, I had Canada finishing in the finals, so I mean, I will wear that with I was not right at all, so that's fine. That Canada pick did not age well very quickly, and that is very fine. That is very fine, regardless. But guys, indeed, saying thank you for stopping by. Yes, congratulations to Spain, well deserved. Here's a question on Spain: do we think they can replicate what the men did in 2000 and from 2008 to 2012, where they won the Euros and then won the World Cup and then won the Euros again? Because the scary thing about this Spain team is that if you look at how they're investing into the game, you can argue they're one of the top. They are one of the top 4 leagues in the world. Spanish league, La Liga Fema, is the one of the top 4 women's leagues in the world. You could argue they didn't bring their best team, and they still won the World Cup. And issues with their coach, which need to be resolved aside, maybe getting Alexia Putellas in a little bit better match fitness and not having her injured. But this team looks like and feels like they could go on a run where between this World Cup, the Euros coming up for them, and then the next World Cup, I think they could run it. I think they could run a nice 4-year stretch where they just pick up all the trophies. It'll be interesting to see how that goes because UEFA is introducing Nations League for the women as well, which I mean, at some point we need to save women's football from itself, and not in the sense that they're doing it wrong, but you can. There's money to be made there. There's no doubt, which is why federations and conferences are saying, let's do this, give ourselves more games, do different things. But at some point, the injury concern, the lack of recovery, more research going in, you have to kind of do something to save some of these players so that they're not playing essentially year round with no time to really rest or move forward. But I think that's something interesting. But yeah, I do agree with you, Jason, here. They have a conveyor belt at the moment, and they do have the foundation to have a similar run. I think they can do it. I think between this World Cup and the next World Cup, they can do it. Their U17s or U20s are in professional environments. So they are transitioning. They're starting to play better. And I think that'll be very interesting to see how that now translates going forward. I think for me, whoever wins the next World Cup will have a lot to say about how football is developed. Because with every sport, right, we always look at the victors and say, what did they do? That's the pathway forward. So I think if Spain continues with their success, we might be able to look at them and say how their clubs invested into the game, how their federation invested into the game. It's not just about the senior team. Get the youth playing, get them into academies, create academies where they can play, create professional environments where these players can now thrive and play. So now when they go in these tournaments, they can thrive. Now when they go into these major tournaments, you have a luxury of selection versus hoping that you have players who are maybe coming back from injury and saying, well, if they're ready, maybe we can get them in playing. But I think this will be very interesting. I think Spain could run the women's game for the next 4 to 5 years. And and especially based off how their youth are coming in, I think they definitely have the opportunity to do it. But guys, let me know in the comments below which teams or players impressed you, maybe which teams or players disappointed you, and ultimately, what's your takeaway from this World Cup? What are the things that you've learned, right? What are the things that you didn't know prior, or what are the things that really opened your eyes in this World Cup? So I think that'll be interesting. I think this World Cup, I do think this World Cup was a success. I think that right at this point, if you look at the attendance, they were going to break the attendance records because you had more games. And I'm not trying to take away from it. But on average, which I think is the better look at it, they were above the France's World Cup by a good margin, right? And once you got to the elimination, if Australia had somehow made it to the finals, I don't know, we would have seen a situation similar. I think we would have seen a situation similar to how when England hosted the men's Euros. And then it's like, yeah, capacity is like 70,000, but we're going to shove 90,000 people into this. I think what Australia did as a host, based off of what we were hearing from it, and I have some in-laws and family that are there, they did a very good job at hosting. And Australia is just a great place to be. But I think Australia has definitely set a standard in terms of how to host, but now ultimately how you can get a country behind them. I think they had, for their semifinal game, 42% of the country watched that game, which is remarkable. 42% of the country was there, and they were there looking well. But we'll see what it is. Let's go through some comments here. I think they could if they stick together regarding Spain. A testament of the development and structure. Agreed. And it's the institutions investing, right? It's not just the league. You see Barcelona, Real Madrid, all those teams investing not only into a team, but the academy and the structure that goes into it. I think that's important as well. We got the Spaniard got this. I agree. I think Spain could run the world game for the next 5 years. I think they have enough players to do it, and it's just about how the world can actually catch up and move with it. We have, yep, that's up for that. All the blacks disappoint me, especially Haiti. I thought you were talking about New Zealand, then you said Haiti. I was like, oh, I see. To a degree, Haiti shouldn't have disappointed you because I feel that Haiti was what we thought they would be. Haiti created chances and finished as well as people who couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. But that's been Haiti's issue during the entire this current crop of Haiti players. Unless Duvernay finishes, and sometimes she doesn't, Haiti will create a bag of chances and then not finish. So it's still impressive that the country is able to create this type of talent, but ultimately their result isn't surprising because I think this has been the Haiti that we knew. They are who we thought they were. And the Aussie defender let them down. Let Sam down. I mean, we knew that defense was an issue, possibly. And I mean, that goal, I think that Sam Kerr goal was probably, for me, the goal of the tournament, just for what it meant in the game at that point. It literally brought a nation from the brink back into a game. But then her miss later on that game, man, that hurts. That really hurt. Then you concede right after that. That was really tough. Should they let Australia host again? I don't think they will. And that's one of the more bothersome things. We don't really find out who's hosting the women's game until a little bit later in the game. Whereas for the men's game, you know 2 cycles away what's going on, right? We'll find out soon who's hosting the 2030 World Cup for the men's, but we won't really know who's hosting the women's probably till next year, which will give them about 4 years. I don't mind Australia hosting. I do think the women's tournament should go to South America. I think it'd be a good time, or put it in Africa. A good shout would be a team like Morocco. I think Morocco did a great job hosting the women AFCONs earlier this year. But them, or even putting it in South America, even if you did a joint bid, I think joint bids are going to be big now with FIFA, just to take a little bit off of the pressure of hosting. But I think a joint bid in South America, or like if you did depending on geography, like a joint bid in South America, or if you did Morocco, I think Morocco has the facilities and it's easily accessible. I think the one drawback of this World Cup for especially us on the North American side was that the game times where you have to wake up and you struggle. I struggled between waking up, catching games, going to work, and then the next day you're just like, okay, I'm going to. Coffee sales in my neighborhood went up, and my sleep schedule has been destroyed. But I think the timing, if you put it in Morocco or even South America, the time zone thing, you could still get the ratings from it going. So I think that'll be an interesting conversation to see how that goes. But I think that would be it for me. I think either Morocco or somewhere in South America would be a good shout. We just did Europe. We did Oceanic / Asia because technically Australia is Asia, so technically it is another Asia World Cup. We did Canada in 2015. I think it's time for it to go to South America or to Africa. I think those two. I think it'll do much. It'll do so much for those two continents and those two overall federations if you have a World Cup there, similar to what it did in what it's doing in Australia right now. I think that is the case. Baltic saying, yeah, they should let Brazil host the World Cup. Brazil has the facilities, we know. I don't know if Brazil is as stable to host it, but I think Brazil, somewhere in South America, even like I think of like a Colombia or like a joint like Colombia Argentina bid would be a very nice bid to go through. So I think for me that would be my call. But again, any coast and any shot is a good choice for it. Is Ivory Coast good in football? Yes, they are good, but Africa as a whole is improving. So you can be good. For example, I don't like shoehorning Ghana into every conversation, but Ghana is one of the top African women's teams, and they were nowhere near the World Cup this year because they couldn't qualify for the Women's African Cup of Nations. So it speaks to the depth that is growing. It speaks to the investment that's going into the game, but it doesn't necessarily stop there. We can look at it from there. The Caribbean hosting would be interesting. That I've always been a fan of. Let's put like a Gold Cup or something in the Caribbean. I think the travel makes it interesting, but again, I think multi-nation hosts, especially with this past Women's World Cup and then the upcoming Men's World Cup in 26, I think they'd be able to. I think that's where we're going to go because that'll help defer the infrastructure improvement costs. Like Australia is able to host it because they have all the facilities, right? They have all the rugby facilities, the Australian rules football facilities, all the soccer facilities. So for them, that's not a tough ask. Another low-key interesting that I don't know why I didn't think about. I know I'd want it in Morocco, but they could go back to South Africa for the World Cup because South Africa recently has the facilities. And it would just be a matter of a little bit of updating here and there. And South Africa, I mean, why not bring the world to South Africa again? But I think either South Africa or Morocco for Africa would be my choices in terms of where they would go. Caribbean can host. They just need 5 good stadiums. I'm just saying if you did that, because I think for the Australia World Cup, how many stadiums did they use? Let me actually look that up right here as we are going into this Women's World Cup. Everyone's just nothing but this is the result. But let's stick. I'll look at this in a little bit here. I think, yeah, the more I think about South Africa as a next host, because they've just done it, I know they have the infrastructure to do it. But I think in terms of the reason why I always go back to Morocco is I think right now Morocco is probably one of the best, if not the best, African federations in terms of what they are doing with their programs and how they are working through. They're the poster child of choose the players over a coach, which they did at the Men's World Cup. How they've invested into it. I think hosting the women's AFCON did a lot for that game. Did a lot for the game in Morocco. And they've been able to start looking around and saying, hey, there are redundancies, there are inefficiencies in Europe. Can we get some players who could represent us and and go through? And I think they're doing a good job at that. But facilities-wise, I think they're one of the better facility-wise in the continent. So giving them a host and then letting them just be that, I think Morocco could do a good job. But again, South Africa has a facility, so there's nothing that really does surprise me. So we've talked about a few things. We've talked about just things that we've learned. So one thing I always like to look at in terms of when you get to finals, you always have the conversation in terms of, okay, do we learn anything from the victors? Is there something we can take away and say, hey, the teams that have won, there's a thing that they did that we want to take, right? You see this in club sports where they say, hey, maybe it's a style of play, right? Man City wins or Barcelona wins. Everyone wants to play tiki taka. Everyone wants to play around good passing fluid football. Or a team like Brentford, I've used them as an example, has a nice run in the Prem. Maybe teams say, okay, well, let's just be defensively solid. A team like Tottenham. If we're looking at the finalists, England and Spain, what are the takeaways, or are there things that we can look at from those teams and say, if our federation did these things, we could maybe turn the ship around? If our federation looked for is it a type of player? Is it infrastructure that was investments? Is it coaching? These are all the questions that are come out here. And I always like to ask to the chat here because I think it's a very fair conversation to have. Like, what are the takeaways in terms of looking at the finalists? What are the things that you think that your own federations can look back and say, hey, if we did more of this, we can do this? Is it just as simple as, hey, we need to invest in creating more of these type of players? Is it just when we're looking at development, not just players who play a certain style, but players who can play all over the pitch? Is it creating the professional development environments where players can come up and move around? I think no North America in the final, no USA in the final isn't a surprise. I was saying this to the GD earlier. I think the thing that makes this the more interesting aspect is that I think the first sign that we saw of the US starting to falter was 2011 when they lost the final to Japan. They came back stronger in 2015. But I think the thing that Europe has done, I always talk about this with my co-hosts on the podcast, and just the notion of the professional environments, I think, is so key. And that, to me, I think has closed the gap exponentially with the US and the rest of the world. I think right now, if you look at the world game, I think you can say without a shadow of a doubt, the US, England, Spain, they're all in the same bracket. If you look at their entire program from a youth level all the way down to senior team, especially on the women's side, which is, again, the conversation we're having here. And I think one of the things that those two countries have done well was the professional infrastructure investment, right? You're seeing teams and players, and I think that's one of the things when we compare that to like our North American counterparts, even like the conversation in Canada with the young players, like the conversation is always, it's not that our players aren't talented, is that you're running up against players who are playing in those professional type of development environments a lot sooner, right? Because of how the North American structure is built, right? It's very much collegiate focus. You go to college for a few years, you play. Ultimately, you decide to go professional at 20, 21, 22. And then from there, that's when you begin your professional journey. Whereas what I feel, and France did a good job of it. I know France didn't perform as well, but I mean, injuries is still a conversation and a topic of this World Cup. But if you look at the teams like in France, you look at players who played in Spain, England. Those players are in club environments and they're developing and they're getting professional exposure, professional treatment, a lot of just professional help that goes through. And I think that ultimately is what leads to everything just happened here in my house. I was like, but I think that's what leads to them being able to surpass them at the youth level. And I think when you do that, now instead of competing with players who at the collegiate level, now you have professionals playing. That really does close the gap. And we see that because when we look at Canada and even the US at youth tournaments, their women's teams, their girls' teams look it's not that they don't look. It's not that they're not good teams, but they look more not even pedestrian, but they just look. They're just one of the other teams. Whereas in years past, you look at them and say, "Yeah, this is a team." Now you can say this is talent that's being developed, yes, but those environments do help to accelerate the talent. Whereas if you're not there, by the time you start to develop those skills, a 17-year-old who's in Europe is in an academy and is maybe pushing for first team minutes. As few 17-year-olds, say in North America, are pushing for that. And then by the time they start to get those professional experiences, we have a girl like Selma Pariello, like she's been in an academy, she's been in a club. A player like Linda Caicedo has been in a club and is playing those minutes at their young age, 19, 20. 19, 20 here, unless you're a gifted player. And yes, those players are gifted, there's no doubt about it, but there's more of those opportunities for them. And I think for me, that's where the gap has closed. And that's where I think it'll be an interesting conversation to look at from the standpoint of in these next 4 years, the US now has the chance to step back and say, okay, how are we going to improve what we're doing? While the world will look, and especially European teams will look and say, hey, we're going to continue to move forward. We're going to move forward with our academies and move from there. But that's just my 2 cents of it. You guys let me know. Let's go through some of these comments that are sitting here. Canada's going to have a pro league soon. Yes. Shout out to Diana Matheson with Project 8. 3 teams confirmed so far, more sponsors, but we have about a year and a half before this gets going. So I hope more players, more teams are able to move forward and go from that. And it's about time. I do agree. Warren Webster, welcome. I'm hoping you're enjoying the day. Bless up. Do you think James should have started for England? Congratulations for Spain. No, but I think because James starting, they would have put her somewhere in the midfield or changed the formation. They went from a 3-5-2 to a 3-4-3. Spain was just taking advantage of the wings the whole time. They were saying, yeah, bring the wing backs in. And just like that was the thing. After the first 20 minutes, England looked a little stagnant in terms of their movement. And I think that didn't leave them into any advantages. So by the time that they got turned over, you're moving the ball out wide, then you just have your 3 center backs. And look, Linda Carter played well this entire tournament, but you keep on putting her in foot races. Eventually, we're going to test that endurance. And I think that ultimately led to where we were. And so if you put Lauren James in, and ultimately they did, and you played more of that 3-4-3, which gives you a little bit more cover and allows your wingers to step back a little bit. Honestly, I think in this type of a game, a 3-4-3 is probably the better option. But I think they could have gone a 3-4-3 with their 11 and then play that a little bit better. Yes, it puts a few players out of position, which is something I truly loathe. I hate that. Just because a player can play out wide doesn't mean that a player should play out wide. Because in football situations, you always revert back to your basic formatting. So if you are a striker by trade and you play out wide, you're going to play like a striker out wide. So ultimately, I don't think James should have started. I just think that the 3-5-2 that England's coach started off with left them very vulnerable, and Spain took advantage and capitalized on one of their many chances. Because realistically, if you look at the chances, this game should have been probably 4-5-1, 5-2 for Spain. Spain wasn't clinical on the day. They had good saves by Mary Earps, there's no doubt. But ultimately, I think they had a lot of opportunities moving forward with it. Stefan Wright giving me in my opinion, it's having a good development structure. Spain pull on 12 different players and won with said players. That's true. I don't even think this is Spain's best team. And I think you could arguably say it. This isn't Spain's best team, and they still won the World Cup. So if they ever figure out, and that speaks to the depth of the program, right? Yes, the best player in the world, Putellas, didn't play, was injured. But still, you had the luxury of bringing her off the bench. And I think that's the thing. 15 players said they didn't want to play for their coach. They pulled another 15 from other clubs, and that's the same team that still beat the U.S. in friendlies last year. Spain's depth, its program depth is ridiculous. And then we're not even factoring in the U17s and the U20s coming up. So I think, yeah, I think Spain is a good example in terms of building the depth through the programs, but then also having the structure home that invests in its players. Or if you're going to try to find players overseas, try to find duels, find them early and get them integrated into the system. I mean, this is a conversation that's not new for anyone here. So that's not a problem whatsoever. While continuing me again with England pressed Spain hard. Spain came out with that press like it wasn't pressing them. I agreed. I at one point my thought was England can put as many players in the midfield as they want. It's still Swiss cheese to the Spanish. They passed through them like it didn't matter. You put more players in the midfield, fine. We'll still pass through them. And I think that was the thing. I think Spain has always given these teams trouble. Like if you look at the Euro run that England went on, Spain gave them the most trouble, I think. And then when we look at the World Cup in 2019, the US got past Spain, but I think it definitely gave them work. So because of that, Spain and their passing makes you. It's the same thing if we look at like CONCACAF. We look at the youth teams, right? Especially the girls teams, right? Mexico will pass through you and press you because they can, and it's up to you to decide how are you going to deal with that. If you self a minute here. All right, so we're going to be a little bit delayed here, so I do apologize for everyone here. But that being the case, I think if you are, and that's the conversation with Mexico. I think if you choose to do that, that's where you end up. So I think that's good to note. And then Warren Webster hitting us with the Canada starting to get as good an opportunity for and options for the women in our region. Hope sponsors get on board. I think that's very important. Just getting the opportunities there. I still think I'm curious to see how this works out because it looks like Canada's system is going to look like they're going to feed. It feels as if they're going to try to use their League One as their feeder system. I think you need more academies in more professional environments because I think that's the next big movement that they really do need for it. So we will go from there. I know we've talked a little bit more, but I think that's the thing. I think Canada's pro league is good. The thing that I really want for Canada's professional league is I need academies because and it's the same way that I look at the men's side. I think if there's only 3 professional academies in the country, I don't think that speaks well. And that we're still creating talent is great, but I think we will have arrived more as a football nation in Canada when you have more teams, when you have more players who are opting for when the CPL, for example, starts to have actual academies and start to develop players that can work through their system, when we can create a showcase league for those academies. And I think that's something that we're going to need for the women's league as it comes through. But all power to Diana Matheson, Project 8. I'm very excited. Anyone in my region wants to start a team, I will be there all day, every day, and it'll be good. With that being said, guys, we're going to go for a couple more minutes here, see how it's going. But let me know in the comments who impressed you this World Cup, team or player. Let us know. And what do you think about the state of the women's game right now? We'll move with that. I'll go through it. I think I think these next 4 years are going to be fascinating in the women's game. You have leagues that are starting to really gain traction. Yes, every time you have a game in the quote unquote in a larger stadium, I think they're looking for those opportunities. So I think the state of the game will be fascinating to watch because now you have a team that's not the US that won the World Cup, which I'm not surprised about for this World Cup. But now we have the conversation we can ask ourselves, okay, so what happens next? How does the world react to this? Right? Will more federations step up? We saw Australia's government pledge to give $200 million for sports infrastructure into the country. How does that affect the game, not only for men but women, or vice versa, depending on how you want to look at it? right? We've seen how different regions are approaching the game, right? You look at like South American teams where it's like, no, South American, some Central teams, it's no, this is the team. We're going to support the team. So if U17s play, the U17s play. And then after the U17s play, okay, the U17s play on a Tuesday, the women play on a Thursday, the men play on a Friday or a Saturday night. Yo, these are the games. Go up there. How do countries and federations look at that? And I mean, the unfortunate part is how will federations now start to look at their national teams? Because ultimately, the other story about this World Cup is the amount of fighting that teams have been having with their federations. I mean, whether you're in Nigeria, whether you are whether you're South Africa, whether you're to different extents Jamaica, you're Canada, there is a lot of opportunities there. But there's a lot of fighting that's there. Can you get that resolved and see the potential? Well, I think to me, one of the bigger sports that are going to grow over the next 10 years is going to be women's sport because it's so untapped. Do I think it might grow a little bit too quickly and then create a situation where there's so much demand that we're not giving players the adequate rest? Yes. Yes, I do. And that's the worrisome part. Will we see more shirt structures come in? Adidas, Nike. Hey, I will give them credit for this. I mean, at least in this World Cup, the kits looked good. I give those guys credit. The kits looked nice. I mean, I'm trying to pick myself up an Australia kit, a Canada red and black kit. Like the kits look nice. Get me a Spain kit, that light blue Spain kit that they wore. Their alternate. Like the kits look nice. There's marketability there. I don't know why I still can't buy a goalie kit as a child who used to play goalkeeper. Why can't I get a goalie kit? I want a goalie kit. Please, someone sell me one. If someone does, I will buy it. But there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of investment opportunity within it, and I wonder if they're able to grow it, not necessarily too slow, but more importantly, not too fast. Because I feel that if they grow this too quickly, the one thing also outside of just teams fighting with their federations is just the reality of injuries are still running rampant, right? We don't have all the research for ACLs and all the ligament tears that are happening. Maybe it's creating more gender specific boots. Maybe it's just looking at the schedule. But that is one of my concerns looking at the game. Just we're adding a lot of things here, but we necessarily building in the proper time frame for things that we aren't as familiar with. I am one person who will say I think that the Olympics overall, I know for the women, the Olympics is senior teams. I think the Olympics should just be a U23 tournament, just so you can give some of those players, those older players, some rest throughout it, so that you're not playing basically all tournaments. I know leagues aren't beholden to FIFA windows, but I think leagues should do a better job of building in breaks based off FIFA windows so that we're not running players into the ground, and then having just wear and tear injuries coming through. That's always been a thought process for me. I mean, for me, to be perfectly honest, if you don't know, I personally am not the biggest fan of Nations League because it's another tournament that comes in. I like the idea, the concept of it, but I think it creates more of a schedule. Yes, it's more trophies to play for. There's more money that's there, but I'd much rather be able to schedule, or at least try to let Federation schedules friendlies with teams where you get to see more of the world game move from that standpoint. But with that being said, how are we feeling with this World Cup? Congratulations again to Spain winning their World Cup. The players played well. I am happy for them. And it's good to see another team on the podium. We saw four teams. Sweden somehow always the bridesmaid, never the bride. One day they'll go. One day they'll win it soon. But this World Cup, I think it was successful. I think we've seen the strides that the game has made. I think now it's just about us trying to match it and finding it. I think the best comments I saw about this World Cup was just the notion of the games aren't just played now, right? There is football that happens with women that is not just every 4 years or every 2 years. If you look at the World Cup and how it moves, there are local games that are happening at places. There are games that are happening around the world that you could be watching and tuning into and supporting. So I think it's important that if we really are supporters of the game, we put in that time, right? I know I jokingly say, but truly, like the biggest win after this World Cup is my sleep schedule. We're back on schedule. But I think it's also good to, find those games, find those players, find those clubs, and really show that support. And even at a grassroots level, if there's somewhere where you can help out, if there's somewhere where you can just provide that additional support, I think it only goes to help grow the game, regardless of who it is. I think the more we're able to do that, it makes the game so much more rich and so much more enjoyable. But with that being said, the FIFA World Cup 23 is over. Congratulations again, Spain, for winning. What did we learn? I think the game is going to be in a very interesting spot. I think Spain is getting ready to dominate the world game for the next 4 years. I truly believe so. I believe that right now, yeah, I agree with that. I think the game is growing. I think it is growing a little bit too fast. I'm not saying don't grow it because it's win, but I think just when we look at the rash of injuries, I think we might have to save ourselves from a little bit of just the overexposure from it. Things that we've learned. Spain rules the world in world football. All ages shows total dominance. I think it shows how they invested, and how clubs have invested, and how they've been able now to create this essentially assembly line of just talent coming through. Right, we can say with the fact that this is the best Spain team on paper, yet they still won the World Cup, and you still have the U17s coming. Yes, Salma playing U17, U20 is an outstanding player, but some of her compatriots are coming as well. Some of her peers are coming as well. I think this World Cup has probably been the best one. I'm glad they finally went to 32 teams. I was a little bit concerned. I said this at the beginning of the video. I thought we might have ran into a situation where we had more lopsided games, but we did not. And I think that speaks, and I said this earlier, to the reality that I think in this World Cup, the story of this World Cup is the coaching decisions, I think, played a large role in this. I think ultimately that's what it was. Coaching decisions ended up playing a larger role in the ultimate breakdown of this tournament because, we look at the final 16 teams against Switzerland, Spain, Netherlands, South Africa, Japan, Norway, Sweden, USA, England, Nigeria, Colombia, Jamaica, Australia, Denmark, France, and Morocco. All those teams had a degree that they had a team identity and they were very much consistent to those strengths. And I think that played well. I was talking to JD about this earlier. I think this World Cup also felt a lot like those early 2000, not 2000s, but like those early 70s, 80s World Cups. Early, I say, because maybe some of us were alive. I certainly was not. Where you had a little bit of knowledge of teams, but then the full story of the teams you didn't have. So because of that, I think ultimately teams were a bit of a mystery, but also a surprise. And I think that's what made this World Cup very interesting because no team was safe, right? New Zealand wins their first game, and then the Philippines shows up and say, no, we'll beat you. We'll come in and beat you. There's no problem, right? You see a team like South Africa, or a team like Morocco loses to Germany. You think, oh, they're going to be walked over this tournament, and then get 2-1-0 victories, and they're in the round of 16. Right? You see Colombia and Jamaica play well defensively, and then ultimately get the goals to move on. You saw teams with great identities, and I think that ultimately showed well for them. I do wonder if now they're going to get the federation support as well as just some independent third party investments. Can they do that both for programs but then also the infrastructure for their teams? I think that will speak to a lot of where the game goes in a lot of countries. And then looking at the teams that just missed out, if we look at teams that missed out of this World Cup, right, how does a team, for example, in CONCACAF, how does a team like Mexico react to this? How does a team like Scotland react to this? Teams that were on the brink. We look at the teams that were in the playoffs, right? How do a Senegal, a Paraguay, how do they now react to the scene? How close they were, and what do they do with that? I think it'll be very fascinating to watch over these next few years. But with that being said, guys, I do want to thank you. I'll keep this up for another maybe 5-10 minutes. We'll go another 10 minutes and then we'll wrap this up here. So, guys, 10 minutes. If you have questions, you have thoughts, you have comments, I know there's a few people here. Just throw them into the chat. Let's just go through this. Things that we learned from this World Cup. Who impressed you? Which team impressed you? Who is a team you think, either based off this World Cup or based off their qualifying, is a team we should be looking out for? Maybe that's a good way to end this off. Who are the teams of the future we should be looking for? Let me know in the comments below. Omar Fowling coming in. I think some of the speed added to their technical play, they were especially on the like, I mean, what they did to England in the first half reminded me of what happened to Canada against Australia, where they just invited the pressure, and then the next thing you know, they took advantage of the flanks, and Mary Fowler, have yourself a game. No doubt, no doubt. Teams that we're looking for, Omar Fowler says Nigeria is one for the future. There is no doubt. Nigeria have the pieces to be a name and a team that does well at this level. The thing that will stop them is their federation. And this is not the Ghanaian in me talking. This is just watching objectively. I've never seen so much talent get wasted away because the federation mismanages it. They have, on the youth level, we've seen what they've done. On this level, we've seen what they've done. I love what Nigeria did. I think the best game I saw Nigeria play in spurts. Yes, they beat Australia. Yes, they drew against Ireland, and then they ended up losing to England. But how they were transitioning between their presses against Canada, to me, was just good to see, because they weren't just sitting back. I saw them go from low block to, let's go mid press, let's go a full press. It kept Canada a little bit on their toes in the game. Still think, again, Canada should have won the game. They did not. We got grouped. It's a rough life. This is what happens when doves cry. Tear. But seeing what Nigeria was able to do without the proper preparation, without that work, makes me think they should. And then when you look at the young players coming through U17, coming through U20, that team should be starting to scratch. That team should start to be knocking on the door of top 25 soon. And based off of the players that they have been developing and have access to, Nigeria will be a team I think that should be, but I think their federation will hold them back. I think another team to keep in mind is Colombia. Colombia, the same way, have youth coming, and the way that they have the way that they have just gathered behind and pushed and supported their youth and their domestic leagues. I mean, you're seeing large 15,000+ crowds coming to their games, supporting. That only adds to it, right? A little subtle thing. I was listening to a live on Twitter I'm sorry, is it X now? Do we call it Twitter? I don't really care. Anyways, Twitter. And you go to a site to buy a kit, and they ask you, did you want the men's kit or the women's kit? And little things like that just show just the growth of where this game is going. And it's good aspects for it. And I'm excited for it. So Colombia is a team to keep an eye out for. A team like Nigeria, like we said, a team to look out for. I don't want to give up on Mexico yet. I think Mexico will come, but the European countries are coming. European countries are coming because they've taken the templates from their clubs and from their men's teams and are applying them to success with them, which means now it's a matter of how long does it take for that transition to flip over. I have to give this team credit, because I did not think they were going to do anything, truthfully. I didn't think they were going to make the World Cup. I thought they were going to lose out in the playoffs, and then that would be it. But Panama, yes, 3 goals versus France, but Panama played well. Panama is a team that has talent. And again, when we look at CONCACAF, teams that are doing a good job of looking at the inefficiencies of players, finding talented players either in Canada, the US, dual nationals everywhere to bring into your system, bring into the fold. Panama did impress me. They surprised me by how well they did. Panama playing better than Haiti at this World Cup is a bit of a surprise, but not really a surprise because we talked about Haiti already. And Haiti is a conversation where I think, man, if Haiti could ever have a little bit of stability in the country, what they're producing right now in terms of talented players in that environment is impressive. Imagine if things just calmed down a little bit. If that could get stabilized a little bit, what they could do. Haiti is more environmental, whereas Nigeria is more just institutional, right? But I think that's a good shout for a team that can come out and do something very interesting. I think a team like Portugal at this World Cup, I think the next World Cup, that team will come in looking to really do something. I think they may be a team that says we can make the round of 16, maybe even push for a quarterfinals. I think the next World Cup, Portugal will be that team. Australia, I think based off their investments, they'll be around for a little bit. And then a team, I don't know what's going to happen with Sweden because Sweden is an older team. I think this was Sweden's best shot to win. I don't think you can run this team back again. So I have more questions about Sweden, the same way that I have questions about Canada. I don't know how they'll look. A lot of it, to a lesser extent, this was a tournament where a lot of those young Canadian players finally got a taste of this World Cup. And they performed and reacted to it in a very mixed bag. In some ways, things worked out well. In other ways, they did not. So I'm wondering how these next 4 years will treat these players and how they'll be able to move forward and transition that way. But I think that'll be an interesting team to watch. I think Canada will be interesting to watch over these next 4 years because, yes, you're moving away from some legends who are playing well. I do wonder now what they're able to do when the reins are fully given to these young players and these players who have been around the program for a little bit while longer. But yeah, give me a few other teams, guys. We got 3 minutes. Yo, Chris Smith, thanks for stopping by. I do appreciate it. I haven't asked anyone to like, but guys, leave a like if you haven't subscribed. Subscribe to this real quick, and then it'll be a good time. But honestly, guys, it's been a good World Cup. One of the more enjoyable, and it's interesting how it worked out because the men's World Cup was in the fall, was in the winter basically. So we had a World Cup, we had 6 months, then we had another World Cup. I might be World Cup tapped out because it is just emotionally, I am tired and physically tired. Again, my sleep schedule is saying thank you for someone for winning this because I can go to bed and wake up at a reasonable hour. This week, because there was only the semis and the third place game, I was able to sleep and I needed it so much. Also, I was sick, so I couldn't really do too much. But guys, going for another couple minutes, who are some teams, who are some players we should be looking out for? I know we have some Jamaicans here. How do you guys feel about how your team played? How did you guys feel? Making it to the round of 16, losing to Colombia. Where do the Reggae Girls go from here? Because I know I got some Jamaican and Caribbean folks here. So tell me, where do the Reggae Girls go from here? Because I think they are a fascinating group because I think they do have the numbers to do some very interesting things. I think they have the players. I think I continue to say I think they need a little bit more in the midfield. They are a team, and I thought this about Nigeria too. If they were a little bit more ambitious with their play. Now, granted, it worked for them. They played solid defensively. They scored 1 goal. They made it to the round of 16. They didn't concede until Colombia. So there's nothing wrong with that. Now, where does the balance between we give you nothing and we want to take the game from you? Where does that balance start? Because defensively, while they did play well, you did see spots where potentially they could have given some stuff up. So I do wonder, especially I know Jamaica has the World Cup qualifiers. I mean, not the World Cup, the Olympic qualifiers coming up in September. Quick update on that. If you were planning to go into that game in Canada, I hope you have your tickets because they're sold out. That stadium will be filled. And I missed out on the ticket. I think I can still get one, but we'll see how it works out within the schedule. But that game is sold out in Toronto. So that's going to be it's going to be a raucous environment. But how do you now balance between having arguably the best 9 this past season in the world, and especially in the WSL? How do you take advantage of her skill set, but also want to play solidly defensively and not give up anything? I think that's the question that Lauren Donaldson will have to answer. But guys, thank you for spending these 80 minutes with me. Thank you for everyone coming by. If you watch this on the if you do this on a replay, yep. GFF, I don't know. With the GF, I don't know. If the Marley Foundation was solely responsible for the team, I would be more confident. I don't disagree with that statement. I do not at all. I think at this point, they just need to say the title sponsor and the board of directors is the Marley Foundation and run it that way. Because if I see JFF in front of it, I don't trust them to get it done. It's just unfortunate. That's just how I feel. I feel like they'll, again, I always joke about this with the men's side, but I feel like there'll be more clerical issues than wins. So I think from that standpoint, that's how I feel. But guys, we're going to wrap this up here. Thank you again, everyone, for stopping by. I do appreciate it. I've even looked, 15 or so likes. Not bad. Thanks for stopping by. I do appreciate everyone who did take a little bit of time to come by. If you're watching this on a rewatch, let me know in the comments. What did you learn from this World Cup? Who are players that impressed you? What are things that you're looking forward to? Who are teams and players you think we should be looking out for in this next World Cup? But guys, thank you again for spending some time with me this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. It's been a question from the African saying thank you. Make sure you hit the like button. Until next time, we'll say goodbye for now.